developing a strategic game plan for, your recruiting section. I apologize, we had a thing come up on Zoom. Good. So anyway, so that's our topics that we're going to be addressing, and if you'll go to the retainment slide, we can discuss that next slide. The next slide is on retainment. Again, these are the topics that we're going to be discussing today, and then again, we'll be asking specific questions from our panelists. And to introduce our panelists, we're going to get off the screen in a second, but I want to thank our panelists because they've given up their time. Also, they realize how important this topic is. And as a company, from a panelist standpoint, I'm the moderator. My company is the Industrial Network Group. We also have a sales division called Total Industrial, and we help put together webinars, but there's no way we could put together a webinar without key panelists. And we want to thank those panelists. And I'm getting ready, as we close out the screen so you can see us, I want to go right into our introduction. So again, great participation. So here today, we've got three, I think, stellar folks who are going to be able to help you as a company. And the goal is, once this webinar, you're going to have their contact information. They want to be a resource for you, not just today, but also as we move forward. So first, I'd like to introduce Kim. Kim's on my left. She's the first person on my left. Kim, I really think our Department of Commerce has to be one of the best. With the ING, we're in multiple states, and I'm biased because I'm a South Carolina guy myself, but we're in a lot of great states, but you guys do a tremendous work. So I want to thank you on behalf of companies here in South Carolina for really, but your background really is focused on talent and development. And so I guess you've been with the Department of Commerce for 10 years, correct?
No, I've only been with Commerce since October.
Oh, excuse me. So your background.
My background in workforce development, I have over 10 years.
So your background, so you're bringing a whole lot of knowledge to the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce sees this as a very critical subject.
Yes, actually, my position is brand new. It's a brand new position that they created this past year because they know that workforce development is very important.
So your background, having worked in technical colleges and workforce development, economic development, you're going to give us a kind of a neat perspective, not just from a company, from the state level as well.
Correct.
So thank you, Kim. I appreciate you giving up your time. Bruce is here in the middle. Bruce, Bruce, I've known you for a while. You've been not just in the staffing world, but you got a very key background in manufacturing as well.
Right.
So
I've been in staffing and HR related work for most of the last 20 years, but preceding that for 16 years, I was in manufacturing management. So that gives me a unique perspective. Very often when I'm speaking to a client or prospective client, we're working on problems, I can see the problem from their side of the desk as well as my side of the desk. So I think that offers OpSource a unique perspective to be able to help our clients.
And Bruce, you're the Vice President of OpSource. You guys have multiple locations. So you're seeing recruitment, retainment issues from companies throughout our state.
Oh, certainly. It is the thing that wakes me up in the middle of the night, the problems that we're having. We've got a lot of problems on both sides of the equation. Retainment is every bit as important as recruiting, and it is a problem that we're dealing with every minute of every day.
So we do have some manufacturers on the call today, so you'll be able to bring that perspective.
Certainly.
And also as a general manager or vice president of a company that is responsible for helping hire people, you're also going to bring that level of expertise. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Johnny Lynn, you and I have known each other for many years. And when I think about workforce and helping companies, you're probably one of the first person to come to my mind. And you've been with SC Works for how many years, Johnny?
19 years in March.
19 years. And you guys do an incredible job. You're also a member of the Industrial Network Group. So I want to thank you that you saw the vision, help our members, because it's probably not a week goes by one of my members doesn't call me and they're hurting with people. So you guys do a tremendous, we're here actually at SC Works in Spartanburg. You got a beautiful office here, and you guys, also, you have divisions across our state, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So there are SC Works locations all throughout the state in the 12 different workforce regions.
So Johnny Lynn's here in the upstate. Of course, she has counterparts throughout the state. So you guys see a lot of different things and help a lot of companies. You guys have a lot of grant opportunities. Sometimes people don't know that. So we thank you for your expertise too. So we're going to dive right in. And the first part that we're going to dive into is obviously recruitment. Probably there's not a company that I know, especially in the industrial network group, we have almost 400 companies. And about every company that I know right now in the industrial market is needing people. And so is that an overall theme that you guys hear daily?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's daily. So, and that's why I think we've had a lot of people interested in this topic, because people here are facing that. So the first thing I'm gonna go, Bruce, to let you start off the first thing, because you're actually working inside of a company that's geared towards staffing. We've got companies here today are trying to figure out what's the secret sauce? What do we need to be doing? So a lot of times companies don't always think about their brand and how their brand is being perceived in the marketplace. What do you think from your perspective, from your company's perspective, how has branding helped you or hurt you from finding people?
Well, it doesn't necessarily hurt us, but it's a huge help. When one of my clients, they enjoy a certain level of name recognition, our jobs become easier, okay? And when people think about branding, they think about marketing, merchandising, and things like that is what I call front door branding. We spend a lot of money on that type of branding. It's important. Careers are made around it. But, it's the backdoor branding that we have to deal with as well. And that's my term. That's what I call it. But, we'll take on a client and, every day your branding evolves. And it evolves. The front end evolves and the back end evolves. And by back end, I mean your culture. Everything that's going on in your plant that affects your employees is affecting your branding. So where it can hurt me is when that backdoor branding is negative. It's when the work environment is toxic. It's when the training programs are not adequate. It's when the frontline supervision is fragmented. It's when the company's message gets lost. Branding is basically how your company is viewed out in the marketplace.
So John, I'm gonna ask this question. I heard somebody tell me, and this is more on the sales side, that many years ago, when you went into a store, and say you went into a store to buy a product, the person selling that product knew more than the buyer. Today it's different. We walk into a store already having researched it. Oftentimes we'll look at it and still not buy it. There we go back. Do you see now people in the workforce doing their homework when they're talking to you about businesses? They already have a feel of what the culture is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's an instant informational market. So you can go and you can find not only information about what the company does, what they make, but who they are. And you can find that on so many different access points where other job seekers are communicating, or word of mouth to people that you know. And I think it's important to point out that we're now at a point where baby boomers are not the majority of the population. Millennials have taken the lead, and millennials are much more heavily focused on the company culture and what am I a part of than we've seen in the past.
So if a company is here today and they're struggling, if they don't have a strong communication presence to the marketplace with maybe a social media presence, a website that provides some information, this is going to put them behind the 8 ball compared to their competitors.
Social media for sure, but just to follow up on Bruce's point, your culture really is defined by what's done inside the house. And if there are challenges that you're having with onboarding or new hire training, I think a lot of times if those things are bolstered and enhanced, it really can impact your culture quickly.
Y'all, we have a lot of questions, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
Well,
and Kim,
And I just want to kind of, now you can go on Indeed or Glassdoor, and your employees can rate you, or a past employee can rate you. And if those messages are not good, and somebody looking to apply for your company sees that, that could really affect your applicant pool. The other thing that I wanted to kind of bring to the table too is that, I would talk to companies, it used to be years ago, you just put your jobs out there and you got hundreds of applications. Well, that's not the case now. People are more picky about where they apply and where they want to work. And a lot of companies, I'm talking about the Richland County area, a lot of the people that live in the community didn't even know the companies were there. And so that is actually getting your brand out and into your community and let people know why they would want to come to work with you, what product you have, because there's a lot of cool products out there. And a lot of people don't even know what companies are located in their actual community. And so that, branding is good, but also branching out into your community and doing things so that people get to know what your company is all about.
So Katie, go over to our chat box. Do we have any questions from our participants on branding? Does anybody have any questions? Not, we'll jump over. We got a lot of things to discuss. Anything, Katie?
Nothing yet.
And hey, use that chat box. If you have a question as we're talking, make sure you put it in there so we can address that. Now, let's jump over to another question. This pertains to, now, we know Spartanburg, especially we're here in the Upstate, and depending on where you're located, for those that have participated on this webinar today, we're understanding now that there's a lot of companies moving in here. And we're now seeing people having to cast a net in a wider direction. So the question, I'm gonna start with you, Kim. With that increased demand, how far of a distance now are companies having to go outside of their area, maybe approximately a mile? And do you have any, from your perspective, how far do you see people are now having to reach out to hire people?
Well, I think they're not just reaching out. I don't like this, but I don't think they're just not reaching out across the state, but outside of the state, recruiting, but that's good if they're bringing people into the state. So companies are recruiting wherever they can find talent. It's not just in your back door or your backyard. And I think it's the broader their range, the better they're going to be.
And John, I know South Carolina's got a lot of press lately. We recently had something about Greenville on 60 Minutes. There's a lot of buzz about the Upstate, Spartanburg, and I think the chamber was recognized as one of the best chambers in the country. So with more people moving in, is that a target, trying to find these people that are looking at our state? And how far are people now having to look to try to fill these jobs?
Well, I think it's important to kind of separate. You've got your mid to high level positions that are being recruited for internationally and have been for a while. But when we're talking about hourly workers and filling, numerous positions in manufacturing, for example, that search is a little more targeted. So, folks are typically willing to commute within a 30-minute drive. If it's much more than that, people are not often relocating for an entry-level production job.
And if people do, is that a short period? They're constantly to try to move if they are having to travel a longer distance. Do you see that happening as well?
Well, if you look at the commuting patterns, not necessarily. So
Okay.
we have I think it's close to 50% commuting from Greenville to Spartanburg and vice versa. So 50% from Spartanburg commuting to Greenville. Seems like a bit of swap, but that's just not how it works.
Well, and let's stay on that subject for his drive, because we know the issues with 85 now going from Anderson all the way to Gaffney. There's constant road work, even down to 26. I counted driving to Columbia. It seems every bridge in our state's being worked on, which is good, but it's tough for our commuters who are having to travel. So is that causing maybe a difference from a worker standpoint? Look, Bruce, have you seen that? Because I know you guys recruit.
Johnny Lynn makes an excellent point. It really depends on the pay scale. There are jobs that that would involve potential relocation, paid by the company, potential relocation being absorbed, the cost of it being absorbed by the new employee, But you know, the commitment level now, I think there's a lot more. I'm going to keep living where I'm living and commute until I know I'm going to be fulfilled in this new opportunity. People used to, you know, they would think they'd make their own way. We'll figure it out. Whatever happens, I'll deal with it. That just doesn't happen anymore. People think about their lifestyle. They think about their quality of life, and that might keep them from moving. But to answer the original question, the radius in which employees are searching has certainly expanded, even in the hourly rate, where it might be a 30-minute commute would have been a limit we'd place on ourselves internally. It might be 40 minutes now, but it has to be for the right job and it has to be sold.
Well, Kim, let me switch over. We're going to talk about wage because that's the elephant in the room, right? Everybody's thinking, and you hear this conversation, oh, somebody will jump maybe on an hourly standpoint with 25 cents. And your mindset and what you're dealing with and the companies that you've seen, how much of a wage increase do people typically need in order to move from an hourly standpoint? Let's focus on the hourly, maybe not.
I don't know if there's a set. I don't know that you can quantify that because that depends on the person. That depends on where they're working. It depends on, you know, are they happy where they're at? I mean, I don't know that you can quantify that, but I can tell you that I am getting, this has been for like the last 2 years, lots of companies are asking for wage surveys and wanting to know where they compare to other companies in their area because they want to make sure that they're retaining their talent. And so I know we're talking about recruitment, but it also goes back to retaining. And I even heard a company, you know, this past week said that they had some employees coming in requesting certain amount of wage increases. And they may not have another job, but they're using that to their advantage to try to increase wages.
So
I don't know.
Maybe, Johnny, with you know, I know you're focused a lot on Spartanburg County, which is heavily manufacturing. If you look at our state, we've been blessed by manufacturers. And when a new manufacturer comes in and they're setting precedent on what they're paying, does the other manufacturer say, oh goodness, you know, we got to hire a much paying level person or company coming in? Does that drive increases up as well?
Absolutely, but I think really, if you think about it, I mean, it's a job seeker market. Job seekers are going to jump for a quarter. But if you build your company culture right, and you show career pathway and progression opportunities and train your people well, they're not going to leave you for a quarter.
Right.
So it's really all tied back to the company and how you treat your staff.
So maybe that's another question we'll lead in, Bruce, maybe from your standpoint. If we know wage is part of the package, what are some other creative ways, financial ways that companies are implementing maybe to attract new people? Have you seen companies offer? I've seen people, you know, I would go by fast food restaurants are offering a sign-on bonus. Who would have thought that? I mean, what are some ways that you've seen some of your key companies that you're working with?
Well, from you know, financial changes, yes, sign-on bonuses, stay-on bonuses. You know, some people will sign on with you and take that sign-on bonus, and you know what? When the period expires, they may leave again. So I even have companies that are offering stay-on bonuses. You know, after a month, we'll give you your signing bonus. After a second month, we'll give you another bonus, hoping they can get them in there, integrated into their system and get them settled to a point where they're comfortable. But back to Johnny Lynn's point earlier, you know, my answer to how much money it takes to get somebody to move is as low as zero. I have documented cases within my own organization. Believe me, I measure everything in our organization of people leaving jobs for lower pay, but the perception of a better place to work. It might be 5 miles closer to their home. Their fishing buddy may work there. There's any number of reasons people will change jobs.
But I'm just going to throw in too. You know, I've heard a lot of companies doing these sign-on bonuses, but those also can backfire on you.
And I wouldn't say they backfired, but they don't seem to have been overly productive in our experience.
Well, but it also help. It could also hurt retaining your talent because if you're paying to recruit, but you're not paying to retain, then your current employees can see that as as a slap in the face.
It's
you
a
know?
slippery
Yeah.
slope.
Like,
Sure.
so you have to be very
So-
careful.
Maybe John and Lynn, if we got somebody maybe on the call today thinking about wages and needing to recruit people. Is there any certain tips you would give someone that's really in the stage of determining that for their employees? Is there opportunity to do the surveys and maybe contact an organization like you to get a study? How do they go about even getting that information?
Sure. So in terms of just labor market data and determining what wages are competitive in a specific occupation, we can pull that from them. There's also a really great resource on the scworks.org website called Community Profile Reports that gives you some really quality data on our region. But we can pull the occupational data for anyone who might need that. Yeah.
Now, and we're talking a lot about hourly, but we do have probably a number of folks on this call that are looking for those mid to higher level managers. And a lot of times people are using recruiters and specialized talent finders. And it seems, probably everybody on the call is needing people. So,
I was just gonna say, you also need to use your internal customers to help recruit. Because that's your best network right there, because you have somebody already working there and they're happy, then they should be, and some companies are giving bonuses to their employees for helping recruit talent.
And we do that. We do referral bonuses for our employees, temporary employees, and we'll even do a referral bonus for a full-time employee of my client. And we'll give them in the form of a gift card. The best source, and I've said this for years, the best source of your next employee is your current employee.
Yeah. And I don't think it's just the job of your HR department to be recruiting. You have your hourly wage for people, you have your plant managers, your leadership, everybody should be helping recruit to your company, especially if you like your company, then you want to recruit for it.
well, I got a couple more questions and then we got to jump over to retainment. So I'd love to get all these in. So we might have to be a little quicker on responses, but with wage may not be in what we all think wage might be the deciding factor, but we're also hearing, because you mentioned millennials, and I'll go back to you, John, since you mentioned that, are workers looking for alternative work schedules? Is that something that might can help someone to think outside the box instead of the traditional 8 to 5? Have you seen some companies implement that strategy?
We have, it's primarily been in manufacturing because they typically run 3 shifts or run 24/7. So we've seen some mini shifts, like weekend shifts, been seeing those for a while. We've also seen some shifts popping up from like that 8 to 2 time frame so that parents of young children in school can go in, work, then pick their kids up. So it's been successful in pockets, but again, still going back to that cultural thing and looking at your onboarding processes and your training processes, if you don't address that first, then changing shifts, increasing wages is really never going to solve the problem.
Well, let's talk about onboarding process, and Kim, I'll refer this one to you. Because people are needing people and needing them quicker, is companies simplifying their hiring processes? I've heard some companies and talking to people, it's like 8-step interview process. Is
Well,
that being
If you're
reduced now?
doing, yes, totally, because if you're doing an 8-step hiring process, by that time they've gone to work somewhere else.
And clearly, I had a guy
yes.
say it was like I may have exaggerated, but it was more than 3 or 4 that they were going through an interview process.
Well, and I think there's a couple things there. I think you need to be looking at your application process, because if it's not easy to apply for a job, a company's going to go somewhere else. Especially your millennials, if they go in and so that's one of the things you need to be looking at. How hard is it to apply to your company, and how hard, and then also, streamlining your interview process. Maybe combining or doing panel interviews versus 3 or 4 interviews. And I have heard, and I'm not suggesting this, but I've heard the companies that are doing away with maybe their upfront, their assessments or drug testing and background checks. I'm not saying that that's a good standard, because that could come back to bite you in the long run. But yes, I think companies are actually, if you're taking a long time to hire, you're losing good talent. The other thing, I've seen hiring events now, which I've never seen this in the past, where they're doing job offers that day.
Wow.
And yes, I mean, right on the spot. So that's a totally different.
Now, if
different-
someone's doing that, is that immediate job background, profile, or they check it, are they able to do all that on site?
It's a
all-
Yeah,
contingency offer, yeah.
it's usually, but they
But
usually,
with a projected start date.
Yeah.
Which is
Okay.
big.
yes.
So I want to close this session up so we can jump into retainment. So I'm going to ask the question, and this for the audience, for those that are listening, I want to see your responses on this. And Katie, I'd like to see, so this is a chance for you to put in the chat box, and then I'm going to ask Bruce to finalize this question. But in your opinion, those that are listening, what is the biggest factor that you believe that people are now considering when taking a new position? Is it wages? Is it location? Is it work schedule? Is it flexibility? Or is it management? Take a second, put in the chat box, and Katie, read a few of those, and then Bruce, I'm gonna let you think for a second. I'm gonna let you close this, and we're gonna jump into our second topic for this webinar. Katie, anybody that put in what their thoughts were?
Yes, we have company culture and management, growth, wage, and flexibility. All three are important. We have another flexibility, reputation of the company.
So flexibility's been mentioned.
Flexibility is popping up again, management, work-life balance. We have wages again, flexibility and wages.
Okay,
Well,
so Bruce, maybe you're the expert. You're doing this. This is your business.
Yeah.
What would your opinion?
we live and breathe it every day. Our entire staff lives and breathes this every day. And the short answer to the question is yes. Yes to everything. And again, it depends on the job. It depends on the pay scale. It depends on the education level of the applicant. But what I can't overstate is that what you as an organization are going to have to focus on is streamlining everything, addressing the cultural issues. And, the last thing that you had on there was management. It struck me as odd that we use the word management, but it's absolutely spot on. It is huge. 2 years ago, there's three ways that an assignment at OpSource staffing ends. The client makes a decision, OpSource makes a decision, or the employee makes a decision. And I'm telling you, our turnover reports, our weekly and monthly turnover reports now, we went from about 20% of those decisions being made by the employee 2 years ago, up to 65 and 70% now of ended assignments are because the employee chose to leave. They're not mad at OpSource. They're not even particularly mad at the client, but they found something they think is better. And again, many of those cases are for minimal increase in pay, and in some cases, a loss of pay. And they'll justify it some other way. But all these things are important. But, and we're going to be segueing into the retention area here. And I'm telling you, that's the part that fascinates me the most nowadays, because I will guarantee you, and I know everybody's different, but if you have a recruiting problem, it is because you have a retention problem.
And that is a great segue, Bruce.
And Chris, we have a question from Drew Barrett. He asks, when it comes to strengthening your culture, is that something that you mainly do by trying to teach the people you have, or is that a big part of the hiring of the right people that fit what you want your culture to look like?
John and Lynn, let's let you go on that. What's your,
He had a
Bruce?
quick response.
Yeah.
Bruce,
Yeah, listen, culture, your culture has to be maintained. It has to be a priority for you. And, I've got 160 active clients, and many of them engage in culture construction on a daily basis. They do it through training, they do it through various forms of employee engagement, and their retention problem is still a problem for them, but nowhere near the scale of those that do not engage and make culture a priority. I saw a meme a couple of weeks ago of a chef makes this beautiful cake, and it doesn't matter if your cashier spits on the cake. It doesn't do any good. You can have a tremendous CEO. You can have great VP. You can have great people at the director level. But if your frontline supervision team is not taking the message and driving it in to the rank and file, then you're not building your culture. You're letting them destroy it.
And it can't be like a one and done, you know,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna train on culture this week and we're gonna talk about why it's important. It's gotta be constant communication and evolution. Just
Well, let's
culture.
talk, and we're talking kind of high level.
Mhm.
So I want to talk, and we got to jump in here. We only got about 20 minutes left. So, Johnny Lynn, tell me one thing, specific thing culture wise, a company could do to improve their culture. So somebody on here, they can leave with something.
Right,
Is there something that you've seen a company do to improve their culture?
I'll give you two things. So one thing is making them understand how they're a part of the product or service and not just, here's your job, stay in this box, but they have to feel like there's some ownership in the whole mission. Number two is really making sure that there are progressive opportunities for folks. And even if it's going to take 5 years or if someone has to leave to get there, make it transparent. Let them know up front. Show
Provide-
them.
It should be
Right.
in every employee evaluation. There should be a section on career path.
So career path. So perfect. So let's jump in. Kim, you're going to start us off on the retention. And the very basic question, so won't need a huge response, maybe in the yes or no, but do you believe retaining employees is just as critical as recruiting employees?
Yes.
Yes, and yes, and yes.
So we all said yes, if it's so important, why are we spending more money on recruitment than retainment? It's kind of, we
That's a
talked
good
about this.
question.
It's because we've never had the retainment issue that we do right now.
Well, we talked about this before. I said, we see it today is you walk in to a cell phone place and they'll give you a brand new phone for new customers.
Mhm.
And then, hey, I've been with you for 10 years and I got the old phone.
And I get.
So how do
And that's what I
you,
was saying. You
I
have
say
to-
that to AT&T.
so how do we get through that if we're putting more money in recruitment? Because we need people, but yet we're recruiting like Bruce said, because we can't keep them.
Well, and
We
that's what,
listen to the data
yeah,
and we change.
We got to change.
yeah. I mean, employee survey, find out retaining your talent is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah.
And again, if you're retaining good talent and the talent loves what they do and they feel part of the team, then they're going to help with your recruitment.
Yeah.
So that's why retainment is probably more
All
important
of my
than.
clients really emphasize exit interview data, which we provide with
Yes.
them, okay? And again, our data indicates that they're not leaving because they're necessarily mad. They may be disappointed, but they didn't feel engaged. They did not understand what was going on. They didn't feel like they were adequately trained. But we put this focus on the exit interview, and as we should. But I have one client where the HR manager does what he calls stay interviews.
Love that.
Why do you stay?
That's a
pretty
great
cool.
And that's just
So-
one thing. I wish we had 5 hours to talk about this
Yeah.
because there's so many things you can do.
Well,
We're
this gives
so
me,
limited on time.
and don't mean to cut you off, Bruce, but I do want to ask you, and John and I ask you this question. Employee engagement. It's a nice word. You hear about it. It's kind of a buzzword. What does that really mean? How do you get an employee engaged so they feel like they're a part of the team, so they see the big picture, so they're not just punching the clock and can't wait till the time's over to leave?
Well, number one, you bring them in and give them the information. That has to happen first, but
So include them.
help them see the mission, the vision, help them find the reason that their part is critical. But really, to Bruce's point, the stay interview is
Mhm.
an excellent idea. But I think, going back to the whole millennial and baby boomer, and I hate to keep bringing it up, I know we've been listening to it for years, but when you think about the baby boomer mindset of I go to work, I get paid, I do what my boss says, and I am thankful to have a job.
Yeah.
Millennial mindset is I'm not just coming here to pay, you're paying for my talent, for my mind. I want to be a
The
part.
game's changed.
It's
Right.
And I see
completely
it,
changed.
And it's communication. Employee engagement, a lot of people think, oh, well, we'll do a cookout once a quarter.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of engagement that is going to matter at all. No one's staying because they're going to get a hot dog and a burger once a quarter.
Communication, evolution, change.
They need to know what our goal is, what our purpose is, and everyone in your organization needs to know what the mission statement is. They need to know how they're performing against those goals. You need to be posting results on bulletin boards or on computer monitors and letting them know how are we doing. Not only what do we need to do, how are we doing against that goal? And you reward excellence and you train failure. You train shortcomings.
Let me go back because you mentioned a word about communication. So Kim, I'm gonna ask you this question. You know, it's another buzzword. You gotta have great communication or companies. Do you think it's more critical now to effectively communicate with your employees than ever? And if so, how do you effectively communicate to your employees, especially in a large organization? How do you do that? Do you do that through emails? Do you do it through meetings? What's the best way to communicate?
I would think team meetings, I mean, or, you know, one-on-one meetings. I mean, I think, and it probably depends on the employee.
Yeah.
You know, the employee wants to feel like they're a part of something and they want to feel important.
Now, Bruce, you
And-
said this,
Yeah.
and cut you off, Bruce, you mentioned about boards. I've been in the plants and facilities
Right.
where they would have great signs up about, hey, about safety, about we produce this. So it's kind of a key, and I like that as well.
Right.
Do you see that very important inside of a plant?
It is inside of a plant, inside of any organization. Every person on here is a part of an organization that has identified key performance indicators. You've identified them. Do your employees know what those KPIs are? They should. Do your employees know how they're performing against them? They should. They need to know how they're performing on their teams, how they're performing as an individual. And the best way to communicate that is posting it very consistently at a certain frequency. And everybody's going to be different. But the average hourly employee walking around on a plant floor needs to know what my purpose is and how am I doing against that purpose.
Now, Jonathan, let me ask you this, because we know some people are driven by dollars. Some people are driven by recognition. So do you think that recognizing employees, having an employee of the month, or things like that make a difference in an organization to recognize those people that maybe don't always get recognized in your
Yes.
organization?
But I will go back to Tim's point. It does depend on the person. You need to really know what motivates your employees. So somebody may prefer to be recognized at a luncheon. Another person, it's funny, I've heard a story about an individual with a disability who worked in a warehouse, and they figured out what motivated him was posters, horror film posters. So that's what they gave him.
I mean, it could be a pat on the back for someone.
Yeah, I mean, you
yeah.
just need to know your people. And one thing I'll add about employee engagement, I know a lot of companies have put out these little comment boxes or where you can submit an idea of what might make a process better. That's great, but if you're not taking it
Right.
and putting it into action, it doesn't matter.
And that's why the comment box, the suggestion box eventually becomes the butt end of the joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
It has dust on it.
Yes.
So-
I've seen a company, I just wanted to say this real quick
Yeah.
because it blew me away. A company with over 1,000 employees, their CEO decided, you know, culture is important, it's critical. So he actually started having a weekly meeting, not with management, with the entire corporation via
Wow.
Zoom. They pulled hourly workers off the floor for this.
to do it.
And it's all about inclusion. It's all
Mhm.
about.
Now, I'm gonna ask y'all a question, and I'm gonna ask those that are listening a question, and maybe put it in the chat box. Does anybody know of a company that pays less than everybody else, but they're still able to retain
100%.
their employees because of their culture, maybe because they're.
Hundreds,
Is there,
hundreds of
and I don't want to name the company because there may be folks on the call that
Definitely.
but why do you think that? Maybe Jonathan, you immediately thought of a company and without saying the name, describing what makes that company different to where maybe wage is not the driving force? What are they doing?
I'll think of one in particular, and they are fairly medium sized, 70 employees or so. They know their employees. They know what inspires them. They know their families. I mean, it really is a culture. It is,
They feel
they're
part of
part of a family. It's not, you come in, do your punch card, you go stand in this box for 12 hours and then you go home. It is a family and communication is vital.
Do you believe companies that have that mentality, don't engage their employees, are constantly gonna be trying to have to find new employees? Because
Yes.
They are.
I think, you
They
know,
are, right?
we're all human. We all want to be a part of something that we feel like we're
Right.
impacting. And if we're
So-
not, we're gonna keep chasing.
So let me go back, Katie, on the chat box here.
Yeah.
Maybe go ahead. Have we had any-
Tamika Browning made the point of saying that management makes the employees feel important.
Mhm.
And Drew Barrett said that the culture is something people feel they can buy into, that their lives and the lives of those around them are better because of what they do.
So true.
And that's
correct.
something you would hear every now and then, 5 years ago, 10
Yeah.
years ago. It is a driving factor for everyone now. And I'll make a bold prediction. It's not going to be very much longer before you're going to start hearing job titles like employee engagement manager. It is going to be somebody's job title. But, you know, in the old days, that was the frontline supervisor's job. The frontline supervisor's job was to link upper management with the rank and file. And we're not doing a good job of that now. Our frontline supervisory teams in all channels, in all verticals, are suffering right now because they haven't been developed. I enjoy the privilege of going through programs when I broke into manufacturing management. It's proven invaluable to me over my years of experience on how to lead people, how to treat people, and how to get people. This is what leadership is. Get people from the spot they're occupying right now to the spot you need them to occupy. And you've got to have far more tools in your toolbox than just a hammer. Because if the only tool you have is a hammer, you view every problem as a nail.
So that brings me to a kind of a final question on this segment, because I wanted to leave a few minutes for just some, I'm gonna call maybe some fast questions to you guys. That's gonna require very less response. But maybe here's a phrase. We've all heard this phrase, and the phrase is that people do not leave companies. They leave bad bosses or managers.
Yep.
And Johnny Lynn, going to you directly, I'll let you start this, and then I'm gonna ask him as well. Do you think that's a true statement? If so, why?
Yes, for many reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons is for years, I mean, pretty much forever, the mentality of management has been, I run your day. I tell you what to do. We don't collaborate. We don't communicate. You do what I say. And that creates a toxic environment where folks don't feel like they are a part of a team. And, you know, it's difficult to work for someone like that. It's difficult to not be seen as an equal.
So Kim, if we know people don't leave companies as much as they leave bad bosses or managers, is it important for companies to be investing in these people? Because you may be a great person for that business, but you have bad people skills.
Well,
And is it important
that-
for them to get trained on how to deal with people?
you hear all the time that people are put into supervisory positions and they have no training, or they've never been told how to talk to people or how to communicate with people. They may be really good at their job and they might be really good at what they do, but if you don't have the people skills, then you're going to hurt your organization.
So you got to develop you're talking the frontline
Leadership.
supervisors and managers, because those are the people, when they look at the face probably of OpSource, they don't necessarily see you, or
No, they don't
maybe
see me.
they see the person in your branch. And we see it with some manufacturing plants, you know, they see the person that's running that shift. And
And in my own organization, our branch manager level is the most critical position in our organization. It doesn't matter how good a job I do leading or any of our directors do leading. We can come up with wonderful policy, wonderful procedure, wonderful platforms. We can make tons of investment. But if our branch managers don't take that message and that training and drive it in to the recruiters, the recruiting assistants, and the admins, none of it matters. It simply doesn't matter.
Well, if you're not giving them the right tools, you're setting them up for
Right.
failure. and you're setting your company up for
Right.
failure. I mean, it's just, it trickles down.
But the branch manager in my organization, the cell leader, the production supervisor, whatever, in many of your organizations, those are the people that drive the culture. And if they're not getting leadership to drive the culture, I'll guarantee you, they're out there pounding somebody over numbers.
So, for those that are attending, the recruitment retainment is a subject, as Bruce said, we could probably go on for hours, but with only a few minutes left, I want to do two things. I want to ask each one of you a final question. And so I want a kind of a final response from you. And then I also, Katie, I want to look at I want to at least have 2 minutes to close out. So I'm going to start with you in order, and I'll go down the line here. Kim, you'll close us out. But I want to talk with you on recruitment, Johnny Lynn. We've got people on the Zoom meeting webinar are probably trying a lot of different things. They're hiring recruiters, they're putting job postings, they're going to Zip. You know, if you could speak to that person on the phone that's struggling, you know, what one piece of advice could you give that person if they're trying to implement a strategy to recruit? All that we talked about today, maybe all that they're facing, just an overall, maybe not a specific, but an overall general strategy for them.
What I would say is if this conversation has inspired you to look at your recruitment or retention strategies, SC Works is available to you, no cost. We're federally funded. We can help you design your own recruitment plan and also hopefully align some funding to train your existing workers and new hires. So my answer to that is give us a call and let us sit down with you one-on-one and customize a plan for you.
So there's no reason to be struggling when there's opportunities and resources out there for them. And you'll have Johnny Lynn's contact information, and Katie will make sure that gets put in the chat box. I'd love for you, since you put that in the chat box, and we can get it out, email it out as well to those that are participating. Bruce, I'm gonna ask you about retaining employees. Your big job is not just recruiting, but keeping people on their job sites. And that's going to be a challenge for you as an organization, probably like everyone else.
It is. And being, you know, a staffing company, we have precious little control over the environment where we assign our employees. But we have some wonderful partners. We offer HR consulting. We'll get in there and we'll brainstorm with you. We'll give you data. We'll let you know where your turnover is occurring, at what frequency. We can narrow it down to a department. We can even narrow it down to a supervisor. And I do find there's a direct correlation with those that engage us on the HR consulting side, as well as the staffing side, are having far more success than those who just want to call us and say, I need 12 more people because I lost 12 last week. Get me 16, you know, because I'm probably going to lose 4 more in the next couple of days.
And I know, Bruce, your passion, of course, you staff for a lot of different companies, but manufacturers, your heartbeat.
Mhm.
So if someone's on this call and they're struggling from a manufacturing standpoint, that's really your desire, is to help that person
Right.
figure out whether it's an internal way or an external way for them to resolve it.
It's exactly right. You know, our business does not profit from recruiting. Recruiting is an expense for us. It's an investment, and we do invest heavily, believe me. But for us to be successful, retention is really far more critical. And I'll be honest with you, my agency's not having that hard a time finding people. We can find people. I would say this, if we go back to the onboarding, the hiring window is much more narrow now. You've got to be able, and in the temporary staffing world, if one of your organizations out here using staffing, and we present a candidate to you, you've got to do something. You've got 24 to 36 hours, or another agency's going to snap them up, or another client is going to snap them up. We have to be nimble, we have to be flexible, and we have to be cognizant that our retention is really more important than our recruiting, because you don't have a recruiting problem if you don't have a retention problem.
Kim, you're going to close us out here. Being with our state, and again, thank you for being with the State Department, South Carolina Department of Commerce. Is there anything for those on the state level that maybe someone could be aware of, some things that you could offer or the organization offer they should be looking into that might provide more information or more knowledge for them to help run their business?
Well, being that I was just brought on in October, I know Johnny Lynn works in the Upstate Spartanburg area. I really can go into any company across the state and just figure out where their issues are. Their workforce development issues. Is it retainment? Is it recruitment? Is it training? And I'm able to make referrals to all of the partners and all the resources that we have across the state. So that's really what my job is. And so I'm happy to help any company because, you know, I hear a lot, oh, all the companies have workforce development issues. Well, what is the issue? Because it depends on the company. It could be recruitment. It could be retainment. It could be leadership. It could be training. There's
those
Or a
resources-
combination of
of
any of those.
all of those. But, and, you know, a lot of times we don't want to be, what we don't as a state is be a cookie cutter approach to these problems because we want to go into the companies and we want to be able to pinpoint where those issues are so that we can actually help them where they need the help. And
So-
not just say, oh, I'm referring them to this person because this is where I always refer them. I mean,
Right.
it really depends on the company.
So if you're on the Zoom meeting today, of course, in the Upstate, Johnny Lynn's a great resource here. Of course, there are offices throughout the state. Kim being with the State Department of Commerce, definitely a huge resources. You'll have her contact information. If you're here in an Upstate and you need advice for manufacturing or how to staff, Bruce is available because he does it for a lot of companies already. We did this today because we want to be a resource. And I want to take just a second and thank Katie. Katie's on the call as well as Shaylin from Total Industrial. They helped put this webinar together, help market it, get it out. And we're going to be doing other things. If you're on a call today and you'd like to have a webinar done with your company or organization, let us know. Our sales and marketing company does help put these on for especially a lot of folks within our industrial network group. But we love to help and support you and get the word out with your subject. So again, I want to give everybody